helps to reduce any noise that you get when the microphone head rubs against clothing as your talent moves. So this is one thing you'll want to have in your kit. It comes in, I mean, you can get it from this in the United States. We have Dr. Scholl's. I don't know if you have different brands elsewhere, but that's a common brand here. And you can get this at a lot of drugstores. You can also get it online, of course. And I'll put some links for that down below. The idea here, though, is you're going to cut it out. So you're going to need to have some scissors. You'll either need to do the cutting beforehand or bring scissors with you on location if you're going to be shooting on location. So that's one of those things you'll want to add to your checklist. We talked about, was it last week or the week before? Having a checklist is important. So one piece of gear you may want to add to that checklist is a set of scissors. Other things. There are a variety of products out on the market. Let me show you a couple of them. Here's one. We've talked a little bit about these before. Rycote makes something they call undercovers. This consists of a couple of things. There are the sort of felt dot that you put over the microphone head, but to attach it, there is an adhesive side. So you can see here's a whole page of them. This is adhesive on both sides. You first attach, you peel this off and you attach it underneath the clothing. You can attach it directly to skin or to clothing, and you attach it where you want to mount it. Typically, center of the chest is one place to consider. Off to the one side can be good, but the problem is that I find that typically clothing is going to fit a little bit more tightly there underneath. So that'll end up picking up more movement noise. So probably better to go center of chest, where there's typically, for people that are in good condition, or for women, there's typically a little bit more space there that keeps the mic from rubbing against the clothes quite as much. So you place this on, you peel this off, you attach the microphone. It actually just attaches to the adhesive, and then you put the foam dot over it. That's one thing that works decently. So those are the Rycote undercovers. They're okay. These are not my favorite, but they're good to have in the kit, and they can work in a pinch. The nice thing about the undercovers is they're very quick to work with. So if you're in a position where you have got to act quickly, those can be a nice option. Rode makes something called Invisalav for their particular lavalier microphones. This will be for the Rode lavalier and the Rode SmartLav Plus. This actually will fit. It's a little silicone piece. Let me get one out here and show you. The microphones just slide right into them. You can see here. It's not very in focus. So there are two holes. The mics slide right in. You don't have to use both holes. I typically only use one, but it is there if you do want to do redundant miking. If you want to have two microphones, in case one fails, you can do that as well. This also comes with an adhesive. The adhesive didn't work very well. It was very difficult to get it attached to this piece, and in my particular case, it left residue on the clothing. So those are not my favorite. The silicone pieces work nicely. The adhesive that comes with the kit didn't work that nicely, so I just used my own tape with these. And so if I'm using one of the Rode lavalier microphones, there's a decent choice there. Another thing you're going to want to have, we'll talk about this in a minute, we have gaffer's tape. If you are not familiar with the distinction between gaffer's tape and duct tape, you do not want duct tape. Duct tape adhesive is lower quality. It's very adhesive, don't get me wrong, but it leaves residue on whatever you attach it to generally. Gaffer's tape has a kind of a more sophisticated adhesive where you can apply this to something, and if you take it off within 24 hours, the chances of leaving adhesive on whatever you taped it to is pretty low. So you're not going to leave a lot of adhesive and gunk on your microphone or on your talent if you use gaffer's tape versus duct tape. So that is all critical to have in your kit as well. And I have sort of a container here that I put a lot of the things in that I normally use for hiding lavalier microphones. Oh yes, here's another one. This is a product called Hushlav. Let me show you what it looks like. This is a little piece of foam. You can see there's a hole. and you actually insert the head of the microphone into that hole. It's this very, very soft foam, kind of a closed cell foam. Some people describe it like makeup foam. This is what the package looks like. Hush Lav, made by, who makes this? The Garfield Company, I believe. Any case, those work quite nicely. I actually do quite like these. The downside of these, they all have upsides and downsides. These work pretty well in terms of isolating from clothing noise. What the downside is that they're kind of big, and if you have really light clothing on your talent, this may be a little bit more difficult to hide on them. So that's the trade-off there. And another thing to keep in mind. All right, let's move these guys over there. I've shown you the not the Hush Law, the undercovers. More Moleskin, can never have too much of that, so it's always good to have some of that on hand. Here is some medical tape. I like to have this on hand as well because some people can be sensitive to the adhesive on Gaffer's tape. And so this is made to be hypoallergenic, so it won't irritate people's skin, or it's less likely to irritate people's skin. In some cases, I think 3M makes some called Transpore surgical tape. This was I think this is a more generic brand, but it's a white tape. The adhesive is made to attach to skin, so it's most people are going to respond pretty well to this. It's not going to be a problem. So there's another option for you. Here is what is sometimes called toupee tape or wig tape. This is actually adhesive on both sides. I'll put a link for that in the notes below here as well. This is really helpful when you're hiding the lavalier microphone underneath a hat, because you can put the lavalier microphone up here at the forehead, tape over it, and then put the hat down over it, so it keeps anything from rubbing against the microphone. This works extraordinarily well. Very good option to have in your kit. Hiding under hats is not something that necessarily happens a lot, but if it's an option, it's one of my preferred options. And then for those that have taken the course, I had a piece in the course that talks about hiding lavalier microphones in hair. This, of course, only works with people that have a significant amount of hair, like someone like me who's doesn't have a whole lot of hair left. So it's going to be something that you don't use quite as often. It's definitely more intensive in terms of getting set up. However, it is an awesome way to hide a mic, because if your talent moves around, it follows them. And as we showed in that video, this is a tiny little tension spring here. I have a couple pieces of it. We use these actually to attach it in the hair. So we kind of make a part in the hair, lay the microphone in there with the head up near the hairline, and then we grab a little strand of hair on either side at the base of the lavalier microphone, use one of these tension springs, kind of spread it apart and pinch the hair. So this becomes the thing that locks that lavalier in place. And you do it a couple times down the back of their head. That works extraordinarily well in terms of the audio quality. It's almost like it creates a miniature boom microphone, because it places the microphone right up here, which is one of the ideal locations for a microphone in terms of picking up the best sound. When the talent moves, the microphone pickup follows their head as they turn their head. So that's also a plus on that method. Same things apply to hat, except a hat covers up the microphone, so it muffles it just a little bit. So anyway, that's a great option. Best to do it when you have a makeup and hair person on the project. That's, a lot of us don't necessarily have that. Or if you're practiced, you can do it as well. So those are it's kind of the things to have on hand. So let's talk a little bit about the technique here. Now, one of the things actually, there's one more. So I have, some of you may have heard of the Sanken COS-11D. It is a sort of a legendary microphone that most professional sound mixers will have at least one of these in their kit. And I've had it now for about a month or a month and a half. It is amazing. It is a great microphone. It's not the smallest one in the world. You can see I have the version with the 3.5 millimeter TRS plug. So that goes right. I use this with my RodeLink wireless kit. This mic does really well in a lot of ways. Its cable is a little bit thicker than the Rode Lavalier as well, but as opposed to the Rode Lavalier, this one doesn't tend to run into a lot of the interference issues that the Rode Lavalier does. I like the Rode Lavalier generally, but this one does a lot better because it doesn't tend to pick up all that interference. And the way the Rode Lavalier picks up interference is um, you attach the microphone wherever you're going to attach it on the talent. You put a loop in the microphone and tape that off, and we'll talk about that more in just a second. And then any excess cable, you kind of generally, you tuck into the waistband of the talent. And the problem with the Rode lavalier microphone is, if you have cable wrapped up in a circle like that, it tends to create self interference, which is a little bit strange. I don't understand how or why it does that. Um, but that's one thing that's a downside on that mic. And this microphone doesn't seem to have that issue at all. It doesn't suffer from that. So that's one of the things that's very nice about it. In addition to the way it sounds great. But this microphone comes with something kind of interesting. It's something like the it's somewhat like the Invisalign from Rode, made for the Sanken microphone. And you can see here, there's a little slot that you slide the microphone into. And then what I do is in fact, I've got one on right now. I can pull it off because I didn't end up using it. This one was actually in a this is a Rode lavalier that I'm wearing here. And what I did, just so I can show you here, you can see on this side, here's the Rode Invisalign. Rode lavalier microphone is inserted in there. This is a piece of the Moleskin, and I just placed that down kind of the center of my chest right here underneath the top layer of my clothing. Then I also have, it's called, I believe, a newsman's loop. You put a loop in the cable just down from the microphone itself. So if you have the microphone mounted up there, a little ways down, you have this newsman's loop. And this is tension relief. So you put a piece of gaffer's tape over the part where the cable overlaps itself. It's kind of hard to see that. But that way, if this part of the cable gets pulled down by the transmitter, it isolates the mic and you're less likely to pick up that sound in the microphone itself. So this is really helpful. Positioning that is important because you don't want too much tension on the cable in between the two of them. You want enough so that if the talent moves, it can move, but not so much that the cable starts rubbing against the clothes, because that will transmit into the microphone. So it's kind of a fine art to get just the right amount there. And then this, I run down the body of the talent. Again, wrap up the excess into, a loop like that. This goes to the transmitter, of course. This gets tucked into their waistband, around their pants or what have you. So that's kind of the general technique that I use if you're going to hide it on the, on the chest, which is a very common thing. Now, for women, if you're miking women and the woman is wearing a bra, which is pretty common in most cases, they are wearing a bra. The nice thing about that situation, and I've done this one in a variety of circumstances, is usually between the two cups, there's a little strap, and that strap will span between the breasts. And the nice thing is you can actually attach the microphone using its included lapel clip onto that strap, and you do it between the bra and the woman's chest. So what that does is it makes it so that that microphone doesn't rub against the clothing, and you get a very, very nice pickup right in that area. Great way to do it. I highly recommend it if that's an option. Now, the awkward thing, of course, is getting it mounted. And typically what I've done is I have given the woman instructions and said, go and do this, and I think we'll be all set to go. So she actually mounts it, and then there's not that awkwardness of setting that up. If you're working on a professional production, typically you would mount it anyway, because the actresses are, they're used to that kind of thing. But if it's someone that hasn't done that before, I just generally give them instructions on how to do it, give them the microphone, have them go off and do it. And then when they come back, I hook up the transmitter and we take it from there. So that's a great, great way to do it. I mentioned already how to hide in underneath a hat. Again, I would use the toupee or wig tape. And again, the way I would do that is I would just mount the microphone pretty much, you know, depending on where the hat comes down to, but I would do it just below the hairline if I could. Use the wig tape to tape it right here. And then take off the other side of the, reveal the other side of the adhesive on that tape, and then put the hat down to wherever they're going to wear the hat. And that also tends to work very, very well. Same thing you can do with a baseball cap. You don't have to, you can actually, because, you know, most lavalier microphones are dark, most baseball caps underneath are pretty dark. I actually mount it just so that it's barely sticking out from the bill, if the bill's right here, something like that. And that works pretty nicely. So another option to keep in your bag of tricks, so to speak. Eyeglasses is actually one of my favorite ways to do it. It's not something you can do very often, but it works quite nicely when you can. And I actually did this on one of my videos recently on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it was the review of the DXA Micro Pro, which is a little audio adapter for DSLR and mirrorless cameras. I actually recorded the entire thing with the Sanken COS-11D, this lavalier microphone, attached to the arm of the glasses. And what I mean by that is it was attached right underneath here, right behind, up near the front, not all the way at the front, but just a little ways back, somewhere around right. It's hard for you to see that, somewhere in this range. And what I did is I just used some gaff tape, very small piece of gaff tape, to attach it to the arm right there. Second piece right here, routed it behind the ear of the talent, and then used this surgical tape on the neck to tape that down to the back of the neck, ran the cable down the back of the shirt and to the transmitter. And that works beautifully. Now, the problem with this method, and the reason why you can't use it all the time, is that if you're going to see the back of your talent, then the microphone, if they don't have really long hair, the microphone cable will be visible. So again, it's not something you can use in all circumstances, but it sounds amazing if you can get it to work for your particular shoot. So that's a good one to keep in your bag of tricks as well. All right. What else do we need to talk about? Oh, in terms of, there is a question here from Gary Davies. And Gary, I appreciate the question here. Let me just read this to you really quickly here. Gary said, number one, in your opinion, is it better to buy purpose-made silicone self-adhesive holders for the lav mic, or use what some recommend, the 3M Transpore surgical tape? So I think, Gary, yes, both of them. I like to have both options available to me. I will tell you that with my Sanken, I found that the little rubber or silicone little thing that comes with it, I'm not even sure what to call it, mount, but you just mount it about like that. You can see the top of the microphone is just barely sticking up. You can actually pull it down so that it's flush, just like that. I usually stick it up just a tiny bit, and then I put that piece of moleskin on top of that, just cut a piece of it on top of it. I usually cut it big enough so that it will secure the cable to the rubber piece as well, so wide enough so it comes down to maybe here. So it attaches the cable and makes it so that it doesn't accidentally get pulled out during the shoot. This works extraordinarily well somewhere in the center of the chest. If the person is wearing a button-down shirt, there's a placket, button placket. That's the part that you button the buttons into. And it's really nice to hide it between the two layers of that. So you can route the cable underneath the clothing, of course, and you just mount this pretty much right up against the edge of the placket, that it's completely concealed, and you get a pretty good response, microphone audio response that way. So that's a pretty good way to do it. So I would say, Gary, I wouldn't say either or. I would definitely have both of them on hand. If you're going to be sticking it to the skin, I would probably try to use the surgical tape, although some surgical tape is much better than others. So that's important to keep in mind. Sometimes the adhesive on surgical tape is kind of weak. And the last thing you want is for the microphone to come to detach from the talent's skin while they're in the middle of a take. It's kind of a pain. So it's nice to have. I would test a few different types to find the kind that works best for you. This kind I find works okay on it works okay until someone gets sweaty. As soon as they get sweaty, all bets are off. So, it's a nice one to have on hand if you're gonna be working somewhere that's not too hot and you don't expect the talent to get too sweaty. But I like to have other options as well. So, I generally will go with the silicone, insert or holder, whatever you wanna call it. So that's a great question, Gary. I appreciate that. That's just my experience. Again, everyone has their own preference on how to do that. I'm just trying to give you as many different ideas as I can here in a short period of time to kind of get you going off and experimenting and finding what works best for you and the particular projects that you're working on. So thanks for that question, Gary. Also, you found, oh, your second question was, have you found using silicone holders to be less noisy? Generally, yes, I think that is true. I have found these to be less noisy. Um, I did some tests, and this one in particular from Sanken seems to work quite nicely. The one from Rode is okay. If you use it with the Moleskin, it tends to work pretty well. But I think the Moleskin on top of that is the kind of the secret. I do not use the adhesive that came with the Rode Invisalign because I didn't find that that worked all that great. But again, different people have different opinions on that. You'll also hear a technique. I don't tend to use this one a whole lot. It can be a good one, but let me just show you here. I'm getting a piece of gaffer's tape. Okay. All right, piece of gaffer's tape. You can make a triangle out of this. So you just fold it in this fashion. Oops, I'm doing it the wrong way. Start over. You want it? You want to fold it so the adhesive side is out. See what I've done there? Just kind of fold it back over and over on itself. And then what some people do is they take their lavalier microphone and, either way, they can go either way. Something like maybe like that. And then you could adhere that to the talent, and then the shirt sticks to this. It keeps the clothing from rubbing on the microphone itself. So that actually can work pretty well. It's another technique to have in mind. So that one I don't end up using a whole lot, although it can be effective. Try it, see what you think. All right. What else did we want to cover here before we go? I guess a lot of you will probably ask, well, what's your favorite technique? Well, to be honest, my favorite technique is this Sanken silicone holder with moleskin over it. That seems to work best for me. Again, that's if I have to hide it underneath the shirt, or you can hide it underneath the collar. That's the way that I find the least noise for in the experimenting that I've done so far. If you have to hide it under clothing, if you don't have to hide under clothing, I really like the under the hat. I like on the eyeglasses because again, those sound better. They sound like miniature boom microphones, and I think it overall works better. But again, I understand those aren't options in every circumstance, so you can't necessarily rely on those as your only options. So there we have it, a little bit on hiding lavalier microphones. I hope those were helpful for you. I'll go ahead and put some links down below the video here, both on Google Plus and on YouTube and over on my blog. You can find this episode on all those different places. Hope that was helpful for you. Go ahead and leave any questions you have down below as well. I'm sure there are plenty of questions. Oh, there was one other thing I didn't cover yet that I do want to cover before we go. And let me just pull this up here really quickly. I'm going to share my screen. There is a product called Neopax. And what Neopax does, it gives you sort of this stretchy fabric belt that you can use to hide the transmitter packs of your lavalier microphones. You can get them for thighs, you can get them for upper thighs, you can get them for, this is a carousel, it will probably change. You can also get them for ankles You can get them a lot of different ways. Here's one for, I don't know, that's lower leg, it looks like. But in any case, you can get a lot of these, and obviously one for the waist as well. But this is a good way. There's also these chest mounts for the lavalier microphone. The Neopacks, though, the biggest thing that, and I've talked to a number of um, professional sound mixers. They love these things. These are really really useful. I haven't used any myself yet, but I am planning to buy some. But this gives you a good way to hide the transmitter pack, which is really really important. Now, we had someone on a few weeks ago that asked about, hey, I was hoping to find out more about hiding lavalier microphones. I'm shooting high end weddings. These are really, really helpful for weddings because hiding a lavalier microphone on a bride is a job, especially with modern wedding dresses, which tend to be very uh, pretty form fitting and pretty minimalistic in some cases. The nice thing about these is you can get the kind for the thigh and actually hide it up under her dress and hide the transmitter between her legs. I know that sounds very uncomfortable, but if you don't have a lot of options, that's one technique that a lot of people have used. You can see it could be more like this, where it'd be a little bit lower down on her leg, but it would be on the inside, and it wouldn't show, and it would be a great way to get that bride mic'd up. So there are some thoughts for you on how to hide lavalier microphones and their associated transmitter packs. I hope that was helpful. Go ahead and leave any questions you have below, and we'll talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.